So we reached the Maskana of the Indian Leis Machshava Tefisa Beitla. We saw that was referring to Machshava, was the pure Sequer HaSoga of Bina by the Adam. And we saw that in that Gufa there were two main Oifanim. There was the Indian Hasoga Sachir and Hasoga Sachlila. And we dealt at some length with the Indian Hasoga Sachlila and the importance. Has anybody spoken to Nachshon about this?
He saw it. He came in and he looked at it.
When was this?
Probably about last week.
I'll have to talk about that. So we saw that the Indian of Hasoga Sachlila could bring to a very high form of Hasoga, even that he could be Masig, the Oifan and the Eichus of the Shlila and the Afloa of the Ein Seif from the elements. We saw that Sof Kosov, that was also the Oifan of Hasoga Sachlila took him into Seiviv Kalam. We saw that Seiviv Kalam is also only a Ha'ora from Ein Seif, and it has a certain relationship to the Oyer, which is Nimshach Yislab Shus in the Indian and the Slavish B'techoy. We saw that it's a Mokir to the Oyer HaMamali Kalam, in which the Oyer Mislavish is called Mamali Kalam. The Oyer HaMaila Mislav is called Seiviv. So, Sof Kosov, why is it that Alidei, the Indian of Hasoga Sachlila, is able to at least form some form of Hasoga, the Oifan, and the Eichus of that Hafloa of the Seive from the Mamali, because they have a certain kesher and relationship one to the other, even though for sure the Seive is Ein Arech, like Abid the Mamali. Although he's not an Indian from Ein Arech, like Gamri. He's only Ein Arech in the, what you might call the Oifan of the Ha'ora. Of the Emissar Ein Arech is in the Atzmos. That's what we saw. That even Hasoga Sachlila in the highest imaginable form can't possibly form any relationship or any form of Oifan HaFloa in the Atzmos of Ein Seif. But that's an Indian which is completely Shaleva Era Klau. It's in Shaleva Era Klau. Yiddish, as he brought it down in Sigonish Dos, it's completely another level altogether. Therefore, the Hasoga Sachlila can't have any grasp there, because in Shlila there has to be some relationship to the Dover HaMushlau, to the Dover HaChiyuvi. In other words, the Mamali and the Seiver have to have some form of connection in order that he should be Shelo, the infant, the Seiver from the Mamali. If it's completely Ein Arech, like Amri Ein Arech, then it's not Shire to be Mazik any Hasoga, Afil Hasoga Sachlila. Therefore, the immediate Atzmos Ein Seif is Leis Machshava Tefisa Bei Klal Afilo in even from Hasoga Sachlila. And therefore, we brought down that even more than that, even Rias Ein Haseichel, and we dealt at some length with the Indian of Ra'iyah de Chochma, but that was a Madrega of Moshe Rabbeinu. And nonetheless, Moshe Rabbeinu, even he said, or even he was told that you can't be masig my pinimiyas, Panai Loi Yera'u, Vareisa Sachurai, but you'll be able to see my literally my fitanias, of not the pinimiyas, because even Ra'iyah the Chochma, and so the Chiddush in saying that even Ra'iyah the Chochma is not able to form any form of Tfisa in the Atzmos, the Chiddush in that is that B'derech Klau, if we take our Indian Shol Ra'iyah, then we see that Ra'iyah does have a certain Indian of Tfisa B'Atzmos in it. Because if you look at something that you see the Etzem Hadar, and your chusha ve'iyah is teifas the davar kamoi shehu. Mashing, for example, we take here in Shmiah, then you're not teifes the Dover Kamosha Hu when you hear about it. You only hear what has been said about it. And so even though there are certain milas in Shmiah, the truth is, Shmiah's got certain milas to it, of Legami the infant Tfisa Be'aetem, it's not shaykh in Shmiah. So therefore, the Salva Taita was that if we're going to say that somebody's holding by Re'iyah the Chachma, but even though that doesn't mean Re'iyah Chushiyah, it doesn't mean seeing the Pashta, of his appreciation and grasp of Inyanim in the Inyan HaSeichel is so high and so atzmi is that he relates to them Ki'ilu Roya, and in a Zarim, which is a Poyo Mamish of Ki'ilu Roya. And we brought the story of the Arizal when he said that since it was Ainian Shel Re'iyah, then it would have taken him 60 or 80 years to bring it into Ainian Shel Dibur, which is Shayat to the Kurchas HaGluyim, Yoysa Ainian Ariyah. So we see that even though we said it's not Mamish Re'iyah Chu'ushiyas, but it is Ainian Shel Re'iyah. It's Ainian of Amitius Geder HaRe'iyah in the Ein HaSeichel. Therefore, Kasal Hadaita, we might have thought that it's possible for that Re'iyah to have some form of Tefisa in the Inyan HaAtzmiyas, with the Hasogas HaShlila can't be Teifes, because the Hasogas HaShlila is of course only a Sogya, and it's also only B'derech cancellation and Shlila from certain Inyanim, to which it must anyway have a basic form of proportion. And therefore we thought that maybe the Inyan for Re'iyah is Yeshaya. Therefore, the Rebbe said that even the Inyan from Re'iyah, the Chochmah, and the Raya was from Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu, he was Mamish Re'iyah, and the Eivishter said, O Re'isa es Achurai, the whole Inyan of Re'iyah is only Shaykh in the Inyan from Chitzonius, and Achurayim, not in the Pnimius of it. So that means to say what we thought anyway from the beginning, that in certain Madregas in Elikus he had the Inyan from Re'iyah. Therefore, the Rebbe follows the Fisher that even Re'iyah the Chachma is not Teifes in Atzmus Eretzei. Zehu Leis Machshava Tvisa Bei, the B'chinas Machshava V'Asoga the Bina, the B'chinas HaYeser and Yoino, Shehu in Asogas HaShlila, V'gam B'chinas Machshava the Chachma. So now he points out that Machshava the Chachma is called Choshav Ma. When we talk about Machshava in Chochmah, then we don't mean the Chusha Machshava of the Orogim. The Chusha Machshava is shot to Revusha Nefesh. And here what he said, the Inim from Choshav Ma, then we mean that Inim from Beetle in the Nefesh, Mitad the Inim HaChochmah, but that's how there, like we saw the Inim from Re'iyah, Shehu P'chinas HaRe'iyah. Therefore it's called Choshav Ma, because Ma is the Inim from Beetle Be'etchem HaMarus, as is well known. Ma is a very deep form of Beetle. And therefore that's the Inyan for Re'iyah. Eino Teifes B'chinas HaAtzmes Chulu. V'lo Yizu Bilba'at She'eino Nitfes B'nishomes Lamata. Ela Gam Bo'elam Shel Yoinim U'Ba'elam Shel Amayla Me'atzilus Eino Nitfes Klal. The Gam B'chinas Chochma Iloa Da'atzilus U'Lamayla Me'atzilus Eino Nitfas B'chinas Atzmes Eretzei. I said to them, it's not only just mitzad. You might have thought, well, the reason why Leis Machshava Tvisa Bei is mitzad the fact that the neshama is Ahir Lamata. And when we say Machshava, we mean Machshava by the order. And since he's Lamata and he's Mugbal in the Guf and he's Mugbal in Inyonim Shel Lamata, therefore he can't be Tevis Inyonim V'Natzma. But maybe in the Eilam Yoinim, and particularly Eilam HaAtzilus, or the Sinim from Chochma Iloa, this is Chochma, how it is Mitzad Elikus. It's well known, the Sfiras in Atzilus are the Inim from Elikus, Mami. I might have thought that in those Madregas, they're the Inim from Machshava, where that's the Inim from Chochma, the highest Madrega in Machshava, maybe that can be Teifes Elikus. And if not in Atzilus, then maybe in the Eilam Shalamayla Me'atzilus. Because the Eilam Shalamayla Me'atzilus are Mami's the first Gilui after the Tzimtzum, Arishain. And they're the Inim from Ak and Akudim. What is going on? They're still called the Inim from Kadmoin, was Kadmoin, means the Inim of primordial, as Madrega, which has still got itself a Inim for Ein Seif Mamish, in the full sense. I might have thought that maybe in those elements, if not in Chochma Ilah, the Achilas and the Chalapokas in the element, Shalamayla Achilas, maybe they do grasp and they have some sort of tfisa in the Inim and Atzmas. Therefore he says, no, even they don't have. Even in the Inim and Chochma Ilah, the Achilas, Shalamayla Achilas, ain't no nitfas, Bechinas Atzmas. The Inim and that Bechina of Atzmas ain't safe is not nitfas even in there. So, leis machshava tefisa bei klal. That leis machshava tefisa bei klal, the gam begins machshava v'chokma ha-keduma. What keduma means primordial, that's what we hinted at. The union from chokma, feel how it is in the Elam Shalamayla me'atzila. Chokma de'ach is called chokma ha-keduma. Eino teifes begins atzma. It's not able to have any grasp, klal, in the Inim and Atzma. So when we use the word teifes, then we use it in the sense that the Alter Rebbe, like we brought down at Barichud in the last class, we use it here in the way the Alter Rebbe uses it in Perek Hey. In Tanya, that the Inim and Tefisa is the power of the mind and the seichel to unite and to grasp with the Dover, that it understands in a way that they become mukaf v'nikaf, and they mamish become misyachedim or muchadim. She'ein yichud klal nimtza, she'ein yichud kazeh nimtza klal b'kachbiyat. But the Alter Rebbe brings out the Roshno there in Perek Hey. We can't imagine or picture such a yichud, but that's a infant tfisa that it grasps and mamish has it. The tuich, there the koyach of the Indian atzayim. I'm sorry, my brother, but you can't do that. Understand? If you want to be in a class, you have to come on time. I'm stuck in shul tirutzim. I feel the tirutzim to kedusha. I love the mother. Allah has come with a camera for not tirutzim to kedusha. But in your particular case, I imagine the particular tirutzim of kedusha. Allah who became, it's not a tirutz, but a gear to coming on time to a shia. Right, so now we go further. So he says that even in so that's the Indian from Tfisa. So even those madregas or Milo Me'atzilas are also not teifes. Kaviyachov, even Chochma Keduma, how it is in Ak, is not able mavish to be teifes. The Indian van Atzmas ain't safe in the sense that it would be said that it has Atzmas ain't safe, but Tfisa betoich the Koyach HaSoga, how it is in Chochma Keduma there. The Ak. Aman and it follows that that's the Lashon Leish Machshava Tfisa Bei Klal, any Madrega. So here the Rebbe is being Machadish a big chiddush, that not just by the Adam and because of the limitations of an Adam. Now I feel it by things which are Adam Ha'eliyoi. They're the Indian from Shia Adam will be, but they're the Indian from Adam, how it is in Elam Mitzrayim, ain't safe, mamish, until you get to Achwa, there's mamish that is going on. But that's called the Elam ain't safe. Is Afu Pikain, there's not any ability there to be teifes in the Unifanat. And if I lace Machshava, Tvisa Bei, Klal. So that's it. So it follows the Tvisa, that on alle Madregas, B'cholo Elemes, the Eibishter remains Mudal, B'tachlis Avdolah, Mitzad Atzmusah. And it's only a Ha'ora, which is Nitfas, Afila in Chochma De'ach. Yes, Mike.
So can we ever grasp Atzmas?
Oh, that's what we're saying. That's what we're about to say now. But when we say that you're teifes, and we have to say that we mean another type of teifes, even though we use the Lashon teifes, then we have to say that it's another oifen of teifes. Because here, like we said, we're basing ourselves on Perek Hey. But the Alter Rebbe Madu over there, the Tfisa HaSogya, the Tfisa HaSeichel. So in a Chanami, Chochma Keduma Diach, it's not like our Tfisa. How he's Madu there, but the same basic principles apply. Just that they apply, but even Mufla mi Hazak Hadik EU Chachim Lev Chochma Yediyah, we have any knowledge in that form of Chochma. So it's called Chochma. Alpi Seder HaSfilas with Seder HaElakus. Now it's Miskalim Milamayla Lamata. It's called Chochma. So the same basic principle applies. When we say now Our nitva zivu, berusa deliva, we're going to see it's another type of nitva. It's another type of tevekas in the Eibishter, not b'derech ha-soga.
Since we said with Sagas HaShlila, we can have grasping of the ha'ara, of that which is mislavish in the Oilers.
No, not Muslim. Slavish and Eilamus, you're supposed to have a Sagas HaChiyuv, myself. From that Asoga, Slavish in Oilamas, you can take from that a Shlila. But you can only take a Shlila to something which has got a certain relationship to that. Otherwise, not trying to go to just shrill from this to that. If it has absolutely no relationship whatsoever, then name is a shayat the whole idiom in Shlila.
But it also said that we can't have any soga in that which is Lamaila Me Oilamas. The Oilamas which is Lamaila Me Oilamas.
No. That's what we're saying. We can have a sogi in Mashal Maila Mi Oilamas. Mashal Gamri Mudal Mikolo Oilamas, that we can't have a sogi. A Siv of Kol Almin, we pointed out in the last shoe of Arichas. A Siv of Kol Almin is only a Makiv, the Gabi, the actual Oilamas, but it's a Makiv HaKorev. It has a certain relation. There's one of the two types of Makifim. There's what's called a Makiv HaKorev and a Makiv HaRochek. Even if in Leis Makshova is in the Makif HaRocha, even in that Gufa, in a higher Madrega, even in the Makif HaRocha.
But doesn't a Ha'ora have the source?
Yeah. So the Ha'ora which comes into Mamala has a source in the Seva. Because it's Korev, Elo Elements. Seva Kol Alma.
Everything has a source. Then is there no way that you could say that since you can understand this on this level, there's no way you can understand?
No, he didn't understand that either. He only understood it b'derech shlila. You can only be shaylo from something which you understood b'lechatchila b'derech chiyuv. You got the idea? So once you reach the highest hasogas hashlila, you can't then be shaylo from that and you shlila. You can only just go higher in the shlila gufa from where you started. You got the idea? All right. So now we go to the new concept. Aval nitrasi who be reusa de liba. Yeah, the Zohar Kodesh says, but he is nitras in the reusa de liba. The bechinas who madrega zu, the machshava ein a teufus bo, hari hu nitras berusa de liba. Well, that madrega, the machshava is not able to be teufus, meaning even the koch machidum di'ah, Hari hu nitras berusa de liba. That is grasped at the day berusa de liba. So we need to understand what does it mean the rotzen of the lay. What does it mean? Was it a pshat for them? Charik lahovin mahu mailas rusa de liba sheteifes beginners atzmas erein sei porach. What is the mailas so much in this ahava? Tisakosov. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that Rusa de Liba is an ahava. It's a how do you call it, a feeling and a midah sheba adam legabi elikus. Albeit it's a high madrega in ahava. It's called rotzen, Rusa de Liba. Of all the midas, their pneumius is anyway rotzen. So we have to say that this is a midah where the pneumius of a godly, the pneumius ve'atzmius of the Indian of the Midas is there b'teikif in this ahava. So why should that be able to be teifus be atzma say Baruch Hu at the highest Indian of machshava keduma diach is not able to be teifus. So in order to understand that, says that we have to begin b'klal to understand the nekudas of ahava at the day of Vedas Adam, and then we'll be able to understand this more pneumius ve'atzmius form of ahava which is called reusa de liba. So he says, Acha'inyan the hini yedua de beklal is hini ha'ahava. You see, we start immediately off with the hini of an ahava. Yesh beis madrega. B'chinas ahava pnimiyas ve'ahava chiteiniyas. There's an ahava which comes mitzad pnimiyas elikus, or mitzad pnimiyas ha'odam, ve'ahava chiteiniyas. And there's an ahava which is v'ikar, even though it may grasp certain high inyonim and certain high madrigas in elikus, of a so-called self, it's chiteiniyas. So we have to assume that that means gam legabi ha'elikus, v'gam legabi the adam. And as a Mavoy and Tanya, Perek Mem Gimel, Mem Dalit, but the Alter Rebbe is Masber over there, the different levels in what he calls over there, Ahava Chitonius, and Ahava Selam, and Ahava Rabo, V'chulu. Well, he's Masber over there at different levels of the Klolis I have there is in Ahava Chitonius and Ahava Panimius or Ahava Achmius. So we'll see that he reaches over there, Perek Mem Dalit, the ultimate conclusion, Beneget to Ahava Achmius or Ahava Panimius, and we'll see it's got a certain connection, a certain link with what we're going to learn here in the Hampshire. So he said, Ahava Chitonius, what is the meaning of an Ahava Chitonius? Hu ha'ava shenilchachom min hadas v'asogeh. V'hainu al yidei asogeh v'izboinenes ve'elakus שמזה נולדו האהבה. ויש בזה כמה אויפני ההתבוננות. So we see that we put down our yesod, our fundament, and we say that the Indian of Ahava, which is called Chitzonius, is because it comes from Das Vasoga. Now when he says here Das, I mean, Klolius, he means the concept of knowledge, the ability of the Adam to appreciate. That's what we mean by Da. But there's also a certain remez here to the Koyach HaDas, the Indian of Das HaMavur, in Tanya B'Perek Gimel, that you can't really come to any real midah b'Adam, ela alidei the Indian of Das, like he's much over there at the end of Perek Gimel. In Tanya, he said if you don't have the hamocha of Das, then you have dimyenis shov. You might have Ahava Telakus, but it's really a dimyan. How do you call it? It's like a mirror. How do you call it? An imagined thing. It's not really emistic. But ain't no chanami we can say that. However, the ikar is that he means to say what the mensch himself can be masig hasoga. The kol mokim b'chsidus means the power of grasp on the part of the Odom. So it's moving that anything which a mensch can understand, sof kosof really can't be a mitius in an elikus. We just learned. And the mitius in an elikus is b'chlal not musig etzel Odom. If ever we're going to say that he has a soga, what that brings to a Hadas, what that brings to a Ahava, then it must be in some way both mitzad the Eibishter and mitzad him. So he said, Alidei Asogev is boinenes be'elakus. So the Rebbe points out it's not just Asogev. A lot of people can be masig in yon. In other words, to a certain extent, to be masig Hasogev is not a trick. I mean, it is because you've got to learn, you've got to understand, you've got to appreciate, you've got to use your mind. But that's even for Asogev. But the Ikar is boinenes. You've got to reflect and use the power of Asoga into yourself, to make yourself live and be married in the union of the Asoga in your mind and in your nefesh in a way that it will be poel a pa'ula in the nefesh order. And that's the famous union of the Chabadski approach. Unless you have his bonus, then you can't really have any emes midah. You can have knowledge and understanding, but you can't really have a emes midah. Therefore he says, Asoga is boniness, shemet b'elakus, shemizeh noildo ho'ahavo. From that comes out, then by way of birth, the inyan of an ahava. So why does it say noildo? I mean, noildo means it's born. And the truth is that the midas are anyway there on the nefesh. All these boniness does is megala the midas which are beloved. We all have midas in benafsheinu, mitzad the inyan, like he says in Perek Gimel. Mitzad the Esses Spirit Salyenis, we've got Esses Kwefes Ba'odom. So the inyan for Noildo here doesn't mean so much the inyan that there's never any Ahava unless he were to be Mizboina. But that happens to be true. But he does still have a certain hidden Ahava benefit. Well, we use the inyan for Noildo, that Noildo is the pshat also that there's already a certain inyan in the womb. There's already what's called the embryo. I mean, in other words, that some Machias is already there in the womb. But what happens with the inyan from the Hiloda later is that it comes out by Begolui. If there weren't the Pu'ula of later, then it would just remain Behelet. Now that's what he means, even from Neildor. That your isbonenus causes something that's there, but it's behelit. And it would always be behelit. We'd never really have any toilas from it. But even from the isbonenus causes it to come out. And so in that respect, we call it leido. In other words, we're talking about the union of a blood which comes out begilui through the union of the pulas hoiloda. In the same way here, through the union from this bonus, there's no the ar. Yesh bo zeh kama ifani is bainan. So we just said that without his bainan, nothing works. So the Rebbe said the different manners and different ways that you can be misbainan. Im shemisbainan, im means if we'll say, in other words, one possibility we take, shemisbainan b'pshinas gedulas havayah. That he's misbainan in the greatness of the Eibishter. So he said, if you're misbainan in the greatness of the Eibishter, then he said, the hainu b'pshinas ispashtus gedulas ebo oilamaz. He said, what are you doing? You're looking at all the worlds, and you're saying, Kival, what unbelievable greatness is in this whole union of the worlds and the creation that the Eibishter brought them all about, and he keeps them all. And he called his Machaya, Mahava, all these Oilamas, that is unbelievable godless. So we see that causes a bittul and an arousal in the mensch that he wants to become korev. That's the inifanav. He has a chukar to become korev to the Eibishter, who's the source of all these unbelievable nivroim. Matches, that's a inifanish pashtas bilvat. It's only a derivation or a expansion. But derech ha'ora, his pashtas always means a ha'ora of the Eibishter's emes gedula. In other words, that he's emes gedula, like we say, in Ashrei V'lik Gedula, say ein chayker. You'll never be able to have any idea on his emes God. Where can you have an appreciation? What's his pashtas? It's only a ha'ora of his gedula. And then you misbainan Eisha Mahava Machayu Ribi Oilamas V'nivroim Miyoi, that he's Mahava and he gives life to a multitude of Oilamas and creations Miyoi in the most unlimited manner that we can imagine. Akamesh Kasu Ma'arabu Ma'asecha Hashem Kuram Gadlu Ma'asecha Hashem. In other words, that's two separate psukim in Tehillim. Ma'arabu Ma'asecha, one posi, or Gadlu Ma'asecha is another posi. In other words, we see we see first of all that there's a ribui in the etzim number of the nivroim, what you might call the etzim fanem, as they say in English, the whole inyan of the Gedula. That leads to the person to wonder, and he say, Ma Rabu, Ma'asecha Hashem. But he said, Ma Godlu Ma'asecha means that in each individual Nibra, there's an unbelievable Gedula. In other words, that there's this unbelievable concept of greatness in the Nivroim. And therefore he says, Sheyesh Gedoylei Nivroim, V'riboy Nivroim Miyoid, Adein Keishve, Shir Klau. Avamil, we got Gedula and Ribui. So we take the union for Gedula. Yes, mine.
Is that like quantity and quality?
Yes, it's connected with. It's got a certain connection with quantity and quality. Albeit, lav kachas adiuk, aber auch upon him. Yeah, generally speaking, other than the good is that we see that there's this union from Ma Gadlu Ma'aselcha. But it seems to me that if you just misbainan, I mean, I was where was this? I was making one of my strips or something. Oh, that's right. I got a Talmud in Montreal that he bought himself. He bought this unbelievable big microscope. He's got out in his little backyard. He's got every down there he looks up at the planets.
Telescope.
Yeah, he's got it's a telescope, but not stuff. It's a very powerful. He's got a chush in these, he's very, very learned guy. Learned in Gemara and Torah Chazal, even in Zohar. He's a pillar. He learned to it. So he found some reference in the Zohar Kodesh, stated Pasha Mishpatim statement, Pasha Truma, the Ikea is Pasha too. That also about looking at the heavenly bodies or something. He bought himself he's got this guy. I didn't have a look at it. He said, the night I was there, he said it's too cloudy or something, you won't be able to see properly in the house. Anyway, he told me that there's that one, when you look at the heavens and you see these stars, there was like little weeny white points, you just see them. He said that they're unbelievable sizes, he told me that I'm like, I don't know how thousands of times the size of the earth, millions of times. I said, it's unbelievable. And you just look it up into the sky and you see this little weeny white speck and it sort of makes a little sort of, every now and then a sort of, a little sort of a cleat. If it's a clear night, this is unbelievable. I don't know how many thousands of times more powerful than the sun. The sun is a star. The sun is like a star. So he said, those ones up there, a bit further, they put the sun in a small pocket. So when you start thinking like that, it's just unbelievable. Your mind just so that's what the Rebbe means by the Gedoylei HaNivroim. And then he says that the infant Ribui Nivroim Miyoid Adain Kates Veshir Cloud. Without any end or limit at all. Now this leads to a famous shiloh which occurs in certain Drushei Chassidus, that it's much more, almost like two different opinions in the Rebbeim. Sometimes it would appear that on certain Lashonos that the Rebbeim say that the holy Nivroim Gashmiyim a tremendous ribui adein this. Over there must be some end to it. But Ilu in certain other Makaimis, the lesson occurs adein keish v'shir cloud. Now that's also what occurs here. It's very interesting. So that would tend to indicate that there's absolutely no limit, even to the etzem ribui of the Nivroim. Now that's a big chiddush. If I say that there's no end to the ribui hanivroim, then that means that the whole cosmos is mamish, how do you call it? Built equal. It's ain't safe. There would never be an end to it. Ain't case for sure. A cloud. So that runs into a Rambam, a famous Rambam in the Shemona Prakim. But the Rambam says that every dover which is mugbal, biatzmei, mukrak sheyeloi safe or gvul. So the oyer ain't safe, which is nimshach, to actually be mislavish in the Nivroim. It's a dover sheyesh loi gvul mesuyam. It's already gone through the koach hagvul, through the tzimtzum v'chulei. And we're having any of an ain't safe. Not going to be ad ain't shir, ad ain't kate. So the answer is it isn't shikashi here. Because what the Rambam means is a thing that's mugbal, must have it so. He means the etzem nekudas adova exes mugbal. It's something which is mugbal, can't be ad ain't safer tachlis. But the koyach hagvul of the Eivishter, that's just like he is. He's ain't safer. Remember, his koyach hagvul is also ain't safer. He can produce you gvul mitzad etzem atzmusi, which is legal. He can produce gvul and it's legal. And I never lefisa kuta. He said the ribui ha'olam is gashmiyim. Mamish the cosmos and the galaxy they do it. It's all ain't safe. Lefisa. I said that's a pretty place. I was sitting a couple of years ago, or a few years ago. I was in England. I was sitting I couldn't understand why I went to the thing, but I went to it because my Talmud, he's a shlich out there. And he made a sort of an evening there for children, to give them prizes and for their good, efforts in their camps and all this sort of stuff. So he said, well, Ganu, would you please come, if you'll be there, and nice people see that my Rav came and this and that. Okay, so I went, at the beginning I couldn't figure what I was doing there. I said, look at all these things, sort of smiling at people. And said, all of a sudden there happened to be a guy sitting alongside me. We got into a conversation, and he's a sort of a makura to Yiddishkeit, he's a sort of a balchua, and he was telling me this. All of a sudden we got into this whole business, and he told me that the whole gufa, this thing that we're just mentioning now, that was a big question a few years ago that there were certain authorities in astronomy, they claimed that they'd found the end of the cosmos, that they'd found that the limit, but beyond that it must be void. There must be no other. In other words, that they got these unbelievable photographs and telescopes. The placement was that they went to a certain point, and they timed it that Mialo be able to say, after so many thousands and thousands of galaxies and hundreds of thousands of light years, trillions of light years, Christ it was, that they've come to the end. A certain second time, it was all in the newspapers, with to do with that they come to the point of the ultimate circumference of the cosmos and the do's and the ends. So they got that far, and they got some other tremendous telescope or some sort of photograph of Christ. P. Kammer Gordon Miser, and he said they found that where they thought the whole thing ended, or that they saw it start off again. So you said the peak in them point was they were getting they finished it. They saw some other whole galaxy starting off all over again. So he said that now the scientists and some of the big anonymous tournaments and all these are tiny, the cosmos doesn't have any end, they ain't saying. So I just sort of nodded at him and said, Nick, I sort of said to him, what sort of finish is that? He said, what? He said, what do you know about these things? I said, I don't really know a great deal, but I know it's written in Siddur that Nivroim ad ein ketver v'shia. And I was Muslim for 2 days in Siddur, but the day I am Kubelas, the Rov Hadrushim is that ein nachanami, it's ad ein ketver, ad ein ketver shia, I feel in the Varim HaGashmiyim. He said, oh, yours? He said, where's this written? Where did you see this? I told him, we became very good buddies, we were having this great talk, the rest of the evening. And he found out on Shabbos where I was by a Talmud of mine over there, for Shabbos lunch, and he came round to the house, knocked his way in and got in, he sat down at the table, he wanted to talk with me before we went for a whole walk, because he had to go somewhere in the desert. And he had to go to some other beginning of some other suburb. A mile away, a mile and a half away. I walked with him on Shabbos afternoon. We had this whole ganzen Arichas. He's cooking himself and calling him for the cosmos and to us in the end. And the greatness of the Eivishter and the whole big Arichas. It made a big effect on him. He was tremendously taken by this whole idea. And he was saying, it comes out that everything's without end. Police off, that everything. He was all tremendously impressed with this bleak wall, There's no end to it. I said, if in the Dvarim HaGashmiyim there's no end, just imagine, in the Ruchnius and in the spiritual sphere, and just imagine Hashem Himself, just trying to, have some, impeccable picture in your mind. So he was tremendously taken by the whole thing. So that's an interesting reference here.
What's
the Rebbe says that at the cage for sheer cloud. That's mashma that we're talking about even because.
What's the two pshat?
So it.
So before there's two pshats and how.
Nah, so another pshat which seems to say that the Olam Eskashmiyim do have a sort of a group because they come with that group. They have a group. Certain Drushim, it's mashma say. However, it's not a stira. What we mean is that mitzad the Olam Ki Bohem, that they must have a group. The Koach Ein Sefer Shofeya Behem gives them an infinite group. So that can be also in two refining. Either that can be mitzad the Mamale or mitzad the Seive. There's more in certain Drushim that the Seive, mitzad the beetle of all the Neroid to the Seive, that's Kiru Poel Behem anyway in infinite Seive. So I mean, one way or another, the final maskana is this one.
How does the Gedula Nivroim also have Ein Ketz?
Yeah?
How does the greatness of the actual Nivroim also infinite? How are they infinite?
How are they infinite? No, they're infinite mitzad their time. They're there forever till the Eivishter will stop them. But their godless is not infinite. What we're saying is it's just a tremendous cut. It has a tremendous effect on them is Beinam. Pardon? When we say the infinite Adein Cage for Shir, we mean in the Ribui. שבזה נראה וניקה גדולס הוויה. That we see the unbelievable greatness of the Eibishter. Ukamaima v'agdula zu ma'isa bereishis. So Gemara Masechta Brachos, but the Gemara brings the pasuk over there in Nehemiah. L'cho Hashem agdula v'gvura v'tiferes v'aneitu v'ahid kikol v'shamayim v'oretz. But the Gemara teaches L'cho Hashem agdula zu ma'isa bereishis. That the word gedula indicates the idiom from ma'isa bereishis. Uksiv, Godel Havaya Umahulu Me'id Be'ir Elokeinu. But this is in Tehillim, in Kapitel Mem Ches. But you say this, I think, on Yom Sheni, Yom Sheni B'Shabbos, in the Davening, Godel Havaya Umahulu Me'id Be'ir Elokeinu. That great is the Eibishter, and he's very praised. And prayer he called Umahulu Me'id Be'ir Elokeinu. In the city literally of our Eibishter, Taich the Zohar HaKodesh. Now you shouldn't think that this is a Gemara, it's not a Medrash either. It's a Zohar HaKodesh. Ein Mosai Hu Godel, V'fi Zekum Tois, that when is the Eibishter Godel? Kishehu Be'ir Elokeinu. As they Taich the Zohar HaKodesh. In other words, Godel Havaya Umahulu Me'ed. Great is the Eibishter, and tremendously praised and so. Without it, is he praised? Be'ir Elokeinu. Yeah, so you might have thought, where do they sing these praises? Be'ir Elokeinu. Taich the Zohar HaKodesh? No. Taich the Zohar HaKodesh is Godel Havaya Umahulu Me'ed. When is Hashem Godel? When is he Umahulu Me'ed? Kishehu Be'ir Elokeinu. Then it's possible that it should be Godel Havaya Umahulu Me'ed. So what does the Zohar HaKodesh mean with that? That the Godel Havaya Umahulu Me'ed or Achmi, how he is mitzad Achmusay, that's impossible. Nobody can possibly ever praise him mitzad that. Where is it possible to praise him, that he should be Godel and he should Mahulo? That's Tafki when he's Be'ir Elokeinu. And what is Ir Elokeinu?
That's my question.
Yeah, Ir Elokeinu is the union of Impasha, it means Jerusalem. But what it means is Malchus de Atzilus. Yeah, Ir Elokeinu is Malchus de Atzilus. Now why is Ir Elokeinu Malchus de Atzilus? Because Malchus de Atzilus is called Olam HaDibur, the Olam of speech. So in order to understand this, you've got to have a little bit of a background. It's well known in Siddur that the Sefer Yetzirah says that the oisias that go out of Malchus are called avonim, they're called stones. Now the oisias are called avonim because the oisias are like a gilui mugbal me'id, which brings to the infant tzimtzum in all the nivroim. And the infant how do you call it, even, or a stone is a dova mugbal, and how do you call it, specific me'id. And there are other reasons why we tie Oisi as the form of avonim. Although it's not a case to get involved in the whole Indian, what is the Taich of Oisi here. I would suffice it to say that the Sefer Yetzirah says that Shata boine shnei avonim, Yata boine shnei batim. For example, if you take two Oisias of Aleph Beis, then you get two houses. You get Bo and Av. Then you get father and Bo. Then if you take three oisias and you make them into stones, then you get three houses, or six, or chayzot was. By the time you get to something like 8, then it starts getting a huge number. It starts getting tremendously huge. And then the Zohar HaKodesh says, the Sefer Yetzirah says, Mishom Yateitzu Uspoyer Masha Eina Peh Yochel Lispoyer, that you should go out and try and count with the mouth. You can't possibly count. When you get to about 11, then the number of combinations is almost Ein Sei. It's something like a chayz, thousands and tens of thousands. Then the more and more you get, the more it just it builds up. So with that the how do you call it? The Zohar HaKodesh says that each letter is like a stone that builds houses. Then when you put letters together, you get these unbelievable combinations. And that's what the Alter Rebbe brings in Shara Yichud Ve'emunah. Each Nivra has got its own combination of the Oisias. And in that Gufa, there's all sorts of different possibilities of combinations. And then you've got other combinations and other combinations that just goes absolutely bli say. That's called Ir Elokeinu. That's what's written in the Zohar Kodesh, that Malchus Tatsilas mitzad the Indian from the Oisias. What the Oisias make houses, and now a lot of houses make a city. But therefore, the Oisias which go out of Malchus Tatsilas are called Ir Elokeinu. So Godel Avaya Muhulo Mi'id. So says the Zohar Kodesh, Eimosai Hu Godel. When is it possible to call the Abish to Godel? Meaning, when is it possible that we should have some idea of his Gedula? He's ever so Gedula, it's not shy of Beklal, we should have any idea. When is it that we're able to appreciate his Gedula and praise it, Mahulo Me'id, in a way that we're not able to praise it with an end, but at least as much as we can unendlessly praise him, Kishu Be'ir Elokeinu. That's when he's in that Indian of the Oisias, but they make the Indian of Ir. But they make a huge like city about countless Oisias and countless Binyonim, and that's called Elokeinu, but that's the Shem Elokim. But that's Pali, the Shem Havaya. That's only Mitzad the Indian from Shem Elokim Bilvad. He said, there was the Rebbe follows Lafizeh, that the whole Indian from Gilu, the whole Indian from Godel Havaya, Umahulu Miyid, is only Kishu Be'ir Elokeinu, Shalidei Ir Elokeinu, Oilam Adibur, what that means, Malchus Tatsilas, Oilam Adibur, the world of speech, Amahava Oilam is, yeah, what that brings about those Oisias, as the Alter Rebbe must be in Shara Yichud, are those Oisias, they are what bring about and create the actual Oilam is, Nika Gedulas Havaya, then we're able to, it's possible to be recognized in some way, the Gedulas Havaya, of a Kimuvan, and that's only Legavi the Nivroim, what they can be Makir, and even in that Guva, they can't really be Makir the Amiti as Ein Seif Padol. Ukadisha Medrash Tehillim, there's another famous raya, as it's written in Medrash Tehillim, Al Pasik, in reference to the verse in Tehillim, Hashomayim Misaprim Kvei Keo. This is in chapter 19, chapter Yutes. What we say this on Shabbos, of course, everybody is familiar with chapter Yutes in Tehillim. It's written, Hashomayim Misaprim, that the heavens, they tell you the COVID of the Eivafta. Mashal Legiba, says the Medrash, a mashal to Agiba Shaniknas Lamadina. Agiba came into a state, he came into a place. People knew that he was a Gibor. They heard that this guy was a Gibor, but they didn't know what was his Gibor. They didn't know how great was he a Gibor, how much of a giver was he? In other words, they wanted to know how much you have to be scared of this guy, or how much not, how much you have to be careful of him, and how much not. They didn't know what was his kavura. They just heard that he was a giver. There was one clever guy there, but this bitui occurs, that occurs in quite a few medrashim. And it occurs in the famous medrash that you guys are all familiar with. The famous medrash that the Rebbe cites from Yehuda Nissen in the famous Maimah of Tovshim Lamadallah, I don't know, but the Moshe Lamelech Shaniknas Lamadina, and he had with him all the ministers. You don't know the Maaseh, so the people were all standing around. One said, I'll take this minister. Another one said, I'll take this minister. He'll be my guest. I'll take him home. So they were talking amongst themselves. And he said, I will take the king. Ano Nosyu Malka. The Kulu Mischalfin, all of them are going to change. Our Malka ain't a Mischalfin. The king never, he's not going to change. He's the king and he's permanent, so I'm going to take him. I just been the master. Going from the famous method. And that's what's written, Shelchi Havaya Omer Nafshi, that my chelik is Taki, the Shem Havaya, the Eivest. So that's a famous measure bought in Ribui Jerusalem. So that's, the Rebbe said once on Yudal Nissen, he said the famous Biur being in Zeva to about 5 different madrigas. What's the pichus of the pikeach? Everybody understands that the melech is probably greater than everybody else. What was the pichus of the pikeach? You guys don't know what the whole man is. What I thought you should do. I'll go upon him. The same thing here, that we don't know the gevura of this guy, we don't know anything about his gevura. So he says, a pikeach echla. So once again, it's going to ask self to go, but I don't know if we're going to be able to go here in these classes into what is the pichus of the pikeach. Finally, what is this? What is he so clever? How is so pikeach echla? So what did he say? He says, Oma, miyavna dehu misgoishish po atun yadin gvurosai. He said from the stone that he will literally be able to, that he could find a way to, he'll be able to move it or lift it up. Or the word mishgoshesh means like to, almost like to play around with it, to see what he can do with it, like to explore it. In other words, it's from the stone that he'll be able to either move or lift up, then he'll be able to understand what sort of a giver he is. In other words, if he moves a huge stone, or lift up a huge stone, then everybody understands what's for a giver. If it's a smaller stone, then you understand that he's not such a big giver. And that's what the pikeach said to the peoples. And when everybody said, oh, this is givaldik, and they get the guy to move his Torah from the size of the stone, then they understand what sort of a giver he is. And so it says the Midrash, but that is the pshat. Kach hashomayim mishaprim kveid keil. In the same way that the heavens tell us the greatness of the Eibishter. In other words, from the heavens, I can see what sort of stone the Eibishter is able to roll. I see these unbelievable heavens, all these unbelievable Nivroim, all the unbelievable Gedolei on Nivroim, and I see the Eibishter moves that stone. He's able to push that stone around. So we get some idea of the unbelievable Gedula of the Eibishter. So said the Rebbe, bis beinen zeis bishpashtes gdulosei, nas is pilus hanefesh, alelakus, vanas b'chidus rotzoi. So he said, when a mention is beinen in these inyanim, and he was beinen in the whole heavens, and the Eibishter is mishgoishish by heavens there, as if he got it. He said that causes in the mensch a rotzoi. How do you call it? A yearning to get out, a yearning to go outwards and upwards. How do they say, up? Let's get out of here. Yeah, to go upwards into Elikus. But, the Rebbe says, well, that's all bishpashtes gdulosei. That's all only in a ha'ora of his emes gedula. Like we said, his emes gedula we can't possibly know. We can only know a bishpashtes of his gedula. Said the Rebbe, nonetheless, even that is pashtas causes the mensch in from rotzoi. In other words, he wants to leave everything behind. He's fed up. He doesn't want any more of this limited world. He wants to go out and unite with the unbelievable greatness of Hashem and be, as it were, cast himself on the unbelievable greatness of the Eibishter and literally leave behind all this small fry down here in everyday life. But that's the Indian of Rotzoi, whether the Pshach, well, it's written by the Malachim over there in the famous vision of Yechezkel over Chayos Rotzoi Vashoiv. They're going out, pushing their heads above the Rukiah, says Rashi. And then when they see the greatness of the Eibishter, at that level they pop back down again. They have this Indian from Rotzoi. And that's a good thing. You shouldn't play it down. You shouldn't say, well, this is only his pastures. This is not for me, I'm looking for bigger things. But the Indian from Rotzoi is a beginning. It's like, without Rotzoi, you can't really get anywhere. In other words, if you don't have a desire to go out and to get higher and to leave things behind, then you'll always be with the behind. You'll always be a little bit sort of stuck with those things that you should really leave behind. You always be a little bit, you always have And because you always be not just feet on the ground, but you be to a certain extent caught on the ground. And therefore it has to be the sinner from Rotza. So emes, Rotza is nicht die emes of Pnimiyah, because it's only nilkach, when it's our level in Elikus, which is anyway Chitonius Elikus. Even though it's at Aden Cage with Shir Mami, but that's only Chitonius Elikus. However, says the Rebbe, this is a beginning and that's a basic Indian in Avedus Hashem, Rotza. However, the Rebbe said there's higher and more delicate than that. And therefore he says, Ubafrat, Kishem Mizbeinen, Eik Shekol Zeh, Ubamaima Varua Piv Levad. He said, if you'll take all this unbelievable Gedula, and it's Mamish Adain Kates, Adain Tachlis, Vashir, yeah, and all of a sudden you'll be Mizbeinen, how all of that is like, it's one Kaviyachal statement. That if we take, for example, by a mensch, one Amira, he'll give his whole ability to speak, the whole of his life, then one little Amira is nothing like every all that he can speak. So here we say that by a mensch, Yelamata, Alachas Kama Vachama, Kaviyachal by the Eibishter, to one Amira, this is by him absolutely, aim is a cold error, at all, cloud. Therefore, says the Rebbe, that's the next kilo prat in this whole Hisbonenus. Now I've reached Adein Cage, Adein Shir, Adein Tachlis, Adein Yonim, and now I say, but all of that is only B'mayim V'ruah Piv Levad. It's only with one statement and with the spirit, I call it like the breath of his mouth. Okemoi Baruch Sha'oma V'hoyoho Oilom. The B'amira Achas Nivro Kol Hoilam Baruch Sha'oma. And so when we say Oilam, we don't just mean this book. I mean, Allah Oilam is Allah Madregas, Allah B'chidnas, Allah Inyanim. It's all Amira Achas Baruch Sha'oma. But in Emerson, in the Zohar Kodesh, it's much of the Machshava Achas. But that wasn't Amira Achas. There's a bit of a Chiddush, it's brought down in Siddur, their Lashon. In other words, that even if we'll talk how it gets into the union of Kaviyachal Dibur, like we saw the union from Malchus to Atzilus, Oilam Dibur, but even there, all those Ribui Oisias, and all those Ribui Inyonim that we spoke about, they're all like one Amira by the Evish. He produces all of them, kilo, like he just let out one little Amira, Baruch Sha'oma V'hoyoho Oilam, even though it's a Ribui Oisias, like we said, Adein Shir, Adein Tachlis. And therefore he says, if I mention Mizbeinen in that, then that's particularly Befrat. Yeah. Oi, he said another possibility, Shemizbeinen Be'etzim Ho'inyan, Shebechol Dova Yesh Koyach Eloki Amahava Eisai, Amachaya Eisai. So the Rebbe said, there's another way. That's looking, you take everything but Klolos, and you go up into the Klolos of Elam, and he said, the Klolos of the whole cosmos, the Klolos of all the Ribui Nivroim. In other words, you're thinking, to use the expression in English, you're thinking big, you're thinking in all the elements, and all the cosmos, and all the Inyanim. So the Rebbe said, I got another suggestion for you. Maybe, instead of trying to think in such an all-embracing way, then he say, take any given nivra, any given creature that you like, in the whole makeup of all the elements. So he said, take one of them on his own. So he said, Shebechol Dova Yesh Koyach Eloki. Did you come to the conclusion that every created creature must have in it a Koyach Eloki, Hamahava Oisoi Umachaya Oisoi. This is what's written at the beginning of Shara Yuchel, what the Alter Rebbe said, that since everything is Yesh Mi Ayin, that everything came about in a form of Yesh Min Ha'ayin, means that there's nothing holding the Nivra. He doesn't have any shores from whence he came. It's only the aims to keep holding him there by his speech. If there's not a speech of the Abish inside every Nivra, then he just wouldn't be there. In other words, either he's absolute Efes or he's something. And what is that something? That's the Koyach of the Eibishter. And that every being you look at is only there because the Eibishter says that it should be there. And if it weren't for the statement of the Abish to be there, it just wouldn't be there. I remember you can take an example. You don't have to, like the Alter Rebbe brings out there in Perik Memalev, the Alter Rebbe says that Al Yecha Olam Esatzim in a cloud. So Minish come over and say, "Oh, yes, still all these Nivroim, or this table, if it weren't for the fact that the Abish is saying every moment, it wouldn't be there. It would be just iron web. It just wouldn't be a void." You know? But he forgets about himself. He keeps, oh yeah, the whole world, yeah. So then with Al Yechi on him, in a cloud, he has to realize he's also the same, that if not the Abish to want him to be there every second, and the Abish to renews him every second, yes, I want you to be here. This wouldn't be here. They're like he brings out there, Koyidim Sheish, you should make braces. It was just like the whole bria, this wouldn't begin. That's another way of looking at it. In other words, you could be big time, you could be pointing the whole, the whole cosmos, and take into account the whole cosmos. Or he said, just take any individual, including yourself, and he said, you understand that if it's not the koyach elakia mahaviyas or machaya, he say, ein dova, or he said, es hatzmei. Now that's a quote from the Alter Rebbe in Tanya Perikot. That's what the Alter Rebbe says there. Nothing can make itself. There must be some koyach making it. Ve'inu chaymi, Atzmei can't possibly live from itself. And that everything must have a divine, specific koyach which is holding it every regard. And then when he thinks in that, it becomes tremendously precious to him. The highest Eloki, Yochel means becomes tremendously dear and precious to him. And then he cocks himself out in that koyach, it's holding the whole mirror together. And he forgets all the rest of it. And I made it like the Alter Rebbe says, if we would see that koyach Eloki, we would forget the ganze mirror. That steht dort in Perek Gimel, in Sha'ar HaYichud. Amir said the Rebbe Amir, Misoira, he becomes awakened, Sheko Cheftei V'Ratzainoi, that his whole will and his whole desire is only in Elokus. Amazing business. Ganze Fakot, der will know Elokus. Lord said, like the Alter Rebbe said. That's what he brings, the Rebbe brings out there in the Maimon, in that famous Maimon that I mentioned. Cut in the famous statement of the Alter Rebbe. He said, "Ich will nicht dein Gan Eden, ich will nicht dein Elam Habo, ich will man nicht as dir ab, as dich allein." So the Rebbe said, that's also only the Alter Rebbe also meant higher than that. He gave a few hecha badem, the famous man. Anyway, whatever. So the Rebbe said, not whatever, but anyway, whatever. He said, "Nasi yochet le'aher v'achayis elokis." He said, "V'chol zeh hu mi'is bonus b'ha'ora elokis." It's all just a ha'ora, ha'mislavish bo'ilam, sof, it's all just elokus, it's mislavish maybe. You know what I mean? He said he came to the conclusion, that's also, the Gavi there is the whole thing. That he couldn't, there's an old saying in Yiddish, "Lipsik go and stone, it doesn't begin." The Gavi there is so, but it's nothing even to talk about. He said, then he goes higher and higher. So this Indian from Rusa de Liba is going to be something very profound. And we haven't got anywhere near it yet. Before we get to Rusa de Liba, David should already finish off the task for us to bring these scholars of Melech Moshiach, because then everybody has Rusa de Liba. We're going to sit and learn about Rusa de Liba without having to worry about it. And we'll all have it, Be'ez Hashem. Take it from the other.
Amen.
Good. Okay, guys.